Good afternoon. Well, by now, you all know what our theme for Easter is, unless you are visiting us for the first time or watching online for the first time. Our theme for Easter is a message in the mess. A message in the mess. We kind of think it's clever. At least we like to think so. Now, you probably would agree with me if I were to say that the world in which we live is amazing, filled with so much goodness and beauty. And we all have experienced that in our lives. But at the same time, we all know from experience that the world is broken. It's not perfect. And every so often, we may say to ourselves, well, we can do better. We can do better. Now, we all have experienced that in our country in the last 2 weeks, as we watched the news of what happened in Buffalo and Uvalde, Texas. And the range of emotions as you watch the pictures, listen to the news. Some people feel angry, mad. When we think about it, sometimes we feel overwhelmed, helpless. Yet again, innocent lives have been lost. Now, we have to talk about it. We can't be silent. We can't just move on. We have to talk about it. So today, as we face this brokenness of human existence, as we try to figure out what does it mean we need to do better, I would like to offer 3 simple points or messages for all of us to reflect upon. So, the message number 1, and we find it in the Acts of the Apostles, where Luke tells us a story of the first martyr of the early church. His name is Stephen. He is a deacon. Now, there is one phrase in that story that caught my attention as I was reflecting this week on what has happened, especially in Uvalde, at that school. And Luke tells us this, that as Stephen is speaking to the crowds, and he has a vision of God and Jesus standing on the right side of God. As he is speaking, he tells us this: they cried out in a loud voice, covered their ears, and rushed upon him together. They threw him out of the city and began to stone him. What caught my attention is what they did. They covered their ears. They were unwilling to listen to what Stephen had to say. They refused to listen, and they were screaming. You know, what does it mean for us, especially when we face the brokenness of this world? What does it mean to listen to one another? To open our ears, not to cover them for one reason or another. You know, it's much easier to scream at one another with a loud voice, or to scream at the TV, or to scream in their Facebook post. It's much more challenging to listen to one another honestly. And that's what we need in our society today. So what does it mean for you and for me to not cover my ears, but to listen to the other person, especially if we disagree in the midst of the debate? So that's message number one. Now, message number two is this. Our faith tells us this, and it's crucial, that we are called to overcome evil, whatever that evil may be in the world or in the society. We are called to overcome evil with one thing only: with good. To overcome evil with good. Good laws, good policies, good actions, goodwill, good intentions, and that always be motivated by compassion when we face the brokenness of this world. Compassion and common good. Now we see this in the story that you know very well. You've heard this story many times in the church. It's found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10. It's called the story of the Good Samaritan. There was a man who was harshly beaten, laying in the ditch by the road. A priest walked by and moved on. A Levi walked by and moved on. They ignored him as if he did not exist. But a Samaritan stopped. Luke tells us the story this way. A man fell victim to robbers. As he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, they stripped and beat him and went off, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down that road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levi came to the place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached him, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged him. That's what he did. And much more, much more. He provided lodging and food for him and extra money to help him. He was moved by compassion. That's what I'm talking about. When you see the brokenness, when you see the wound, we are called to be moved by goodness and by compassion as Christians. Now notice, who is it that Jesus is speaking to when he tells this story? To all of us, yes. But specifically in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is speaking to a lawyer, to a legislator, someone who is responsible for interpreting the law and creating policies in that time and in that culture. So we are called to be like Samaritans. We need to stop in a moments like this. We can't just move on like the Levi and the priest. We have to be moved with compassion and goodness and overcome evil with good. But we can only do it when we listen to one another honestly. No matter how wide or deep our differences may be, when we unite to seek solutions together, not sitting in silos. If it is to be better. Now, unity is the key. Let me repeat this again. Unity is the key. That is what Jesus is praying for today at the Last Supper, isn't he? He's praying for those who will become his followers in the future. That includes you and me in this time, in this place, with these challenges that we are facing. And this is what he is saying as he speaks to God the Father. We read in the Gospel of John. Lifting up his eyes to heaven, Jesus prayed, saying, Holy Father, I pray not only for them, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. I pray so that they may be one. So Jesus is praying for unity among his disciples. So amidst the violence we have experienced in the last 2 weeks, we are called to unite and not attack each other. To unite, to listen to one another. We are called to be good Samaritans and to bind the wounds. So in conclusion, the world is a beautiful place. We need to remember that. It's amazing, filled with much goodness and beauty. But it is also a place that sometimes is broken. And as we face that brokenness, we ask ourselves a question. How can we do it better? And where it starts is with this. Number one, we have to open our ears and listen to one another. Honestly. Number two, we have to stop. We can't just move on. And be moved with compassion and goodness and goodwill and good intentions. And lastly, if we are to do it better, we have to do it together. as a society. We have to unite.